Today we're going to be talking about a major economic issue which I believe is not getting enough attention. And what is this major economic issue? The issue is aging demographics. So this issue is usually glossed over because when it happens, it is a slow, gradual process and it is not a sudden shock. And usually when people do bring it up, they exaggerate it, which reduces the issue's credibility because they're trying to sell a book. I mean, who would do such a thing? But nevertheless, this is an issue that still needs to be dealt with. It's not going to trigger the end of capitalism and civilization. It is a major issue, but it's not that serious. So in today's video, I'm going to be explaining what aging demographics actually is, and then I'll point out the statistics of the issue, so then you can judge for yourself. Think about a normal worker. They go to work, they get paid, and then they spend that money into the economy, and they pay taxes. So this is both good for the Australian government and for the individual worker. And to put this simply, all workers are assets to the country. And on average, most of us spend about 45 years working. So it is only fair that they get to spend a few years as a liability in retirement. And why are they a liability rather than an asset when they retire? Because they're no longer putting money into the economy and they're only taking money out of the economy through both the medical expenses and just their general living costs. And they rely on the other workers for supporting their retirements. Why is this suddenly becoming a slow creeping issue? Well, it is for two reasons. So the first reason is that women are not having 14 babies anymore. In fact, the average is actually 1.58 in developed countries. With that in mind, for the generations that are coming after them, there are not as many workers to replace the amount of retirees. And the second reason for why this is suddenly becoming a big issue is because our life expectancies are increasing. Let me explain. In Australia, in the 1970s, our life expectancy was 70 years. So when you retire at 65, and then on average people make it to 70, the working population have to support retirees for approximately 5 years. However, today's life expectancy is 83 years old, and yet workers are still finishing at 65. So we're having to support retirees for almost 20 years. So if less people are replacing their retirees as they retire, and with retirees spending more time as retirees, this is creating a bit of a doubly compounding effect that is going to have a very slow but dramatic effect on all of our world economies. And for those of us that are members of the Financial Independence Retire Early or FIRE community, we're not exactly helping the situation either. And this is an issue whether your country has a generous pension system or not. If your country does have a generous pension system, all the workers will be paying for it in their taxes. And if the country does not have a generous pension system, the workers will be paying for it directly by supporting their grandparents and their respected households. So let's actually get into the hard numbers and the hard statistics and all the forecasts. So in the United States, there's approximately 3.5 workers currently supporting every retiree. But by 2040, that'll be 2.5 workers supporting retirees. So that is approximately about a 29% fall. In India, there are 9 workers supporting every retiree, and there'll be 6 in 2040. That is a 33% fall. China, and this is the most extreme case, have 6.5 workers supporting every retiree, but in 2040, they'll have 2.1. That is a 68% fall. This is a massive issue for China, and it is obviously because of the one-child policy, which has now really turned around to bite them. Now, Australia has 4.5 workers per retiree today, but it'll be 2.6 in 2040. So that is a 43% fall. So we're actually going to get hit pretty hard as well. Now, the UK and Germany, they have almost identical statistics, so I'll just put them in the same bubble. They have 2.75 workers per retiree, but they'll be dropping to 1.75, so there's a 46% fall, so they're really going to feel it as well. Japan has 1.9 today, and they'll have 1.5 in 2040, so they have a 22% fall. And speaking of Japan, in the 1960s, they had 8.5 workers per retiree, and they consistently declined until their economy grew to where it was 4.5 workers per retiree. So that was about a 50% fall. So when they crossed that 50% mark, that's when the Japanese economy really sort of fell into a hard spot where they've hit this, basically gone across a lost decade, and now they're facing a permanent stagflation situation. What those percentage declines mean is that we have to be that percent more productive in order to get the exact same output. So as an example, Americans will need to be 29% more productive in order to achieve the exact same output as what they're achieving today by 2040. You can understand why this is a very big issue. I mean, Australia's 43%, Europe's 46%, America's 29%, and China, I mean, they're incredibly efficient and productive right now, but 68%, I mean, wow. So does this mean that we're all going to be working extra hard in the future without any additional benefit? Are we facing a massive doom and gloom situation? Well, not quite, because fortunately, I was not the only person to see this issue coming. Quite a few people have forecasted that this is going to become a problem, and there's already a couple of solutions being executed by the world's major economies. Let me explain. So there's two strategies to overcome this issue. So the first is immigration, and second is technology. But first, let's start with immigration. So in the developing world, this is not quite as much of an issue as it is for the developed world. And that is because in the developing world, there are still many babies born per woman. In fact, in Sudan, it is actually 7 babies per woman. And in the West, it is approximately 1.58. And basically, you've got the entire developing world that is in between those two extremes. So there are many countries which we can accept immigration from. And the second solution for this problem is through artificial intelligence and robotics. Robotics and AI will enable the current existing workers to achieve far more efficiency and far more output than what previous generations could have never thought was possible. An example that we're already seeing today is in our supermarkets. I'm sure that many of you have seen those self-serve checkouts, and these reduce the need for cashier workers and then frees up those workers to do other roles within the company. So, how is this going to play out? Well, that is actually a very hard question. The only historical example that we have of this is Japan, and they put in a lot of effort to improve their robotics, but they did it far too early where robotics didn't really have a realistic chance of supplementing the workforce, and they did zero immigration. But it does show what happens if you do nothing to address the problem. So, to cut a long story short, more work needs to be done from all of the developed countries in order to get the same output from what we were doing in the past. And hopefully we can achieve this through AI, robotics, and immigration. But it is a big challenge that many of the world's big countries are facing. They know that they're facing this challenge. And basically my big hope of this video is just to watch this space. Thanks for watching.